Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Trust the week's going well. Macro thoughts. The yen's rally may have legs, so says Bloomberg. The currency is laying the foundations for a move toward 100 against the dollar. Yen's rally may have legs. According to technical charts and investor positioning, its gains last week amplified the risk of a full reversal of the yen slide in late 2016 when it went from 100 to 118 versus the dollar after the US election of Donald Trump. I tend to agree with that, though the positioning is very heavy and the Bank of Japan can come and wipe people out for fun. But take a look at the chart. I think it's suggesting a very strong push. Reaganomics 2.0, Trump bets on trickle-down economics and the existence of the Laffer curve, so says Holger. Home thoughts, originally planned to last 90 Martian days, called Sols. Mars rover's opportunity keeps going and going with the 5,000th sunrise this morning. Quite a good photograph, I thought, as well. I had the perfect encounter with a male gelada in exactly the kind of spot I would have dreamt of, David Yarrow. I do my job for moments like this photograph, as well as any I have taken in the last few years, hammers home the diversity of our planet. Indeed, and I'm watching a few nature movies of late, and I can't believe when you look at the numbers, we've decimated the population of animals. Conrad has come under a lot of criticism, but I think somewhat unfairly. He lived in a certain moment, and therefore, some of his opinions were coloured by that moment, but I really think he was incredibly prescient. There's a wonderful review called The Heart of Conrad by Colm, Tóibín in the New York books. Joseph Conrad's heroes were often alone and close to hostility and danger. Sometimes when Conrad's imagination was at its most fertile and his command of English at its most precise, the danger came darkly from within the self. At other times, however, it came from what could not be named. Conrad sought then to evoke rather than delineate, using something close to the language of prayer. While his imagination was content at times with the tiny, vivid, perfectly observed detail, it was also nourished by the need to suggest and symbolize. Like a poet, he often left the space in between, strangely, alluringly vacant. His own vague terms, words like ineffable, infinite, mysterious, unknowable, were as close as he could come to a sense of our fate in the world or the essence of the universe, a sense that reached beyond the time he described and beyond his character's circumstances. And it's an extremely good essay, do read it. It appeared to us a land without memories, regrets and hopes, a land where nothing could survive the coming of the night, and where each sunrise, like a dazzling act of special creation, was disconnected from the eve and the morrow. In rereading The Secret Agent, he discovers characters and phrases that strike him as real in a way they had not before. He notes a phrase, the exasperated vanity of ignorance, about one of the terrorists in the book who took the part of an insolent and venomous evoker of sinister impulses which lurk in the blind envy and exasperated vanity of ignorance. After 9/11 and the rise of Islamist terrorism, I was startled to remember that the same author who condemned imperialism in The Heart of Darkness had also written The Secret Agent, which centers around a terrorist bomb plot in London After the 2008 financial crisis, I found Conrad in Nostromo, 1904, portraying multinational capitalism getting up to the same kinds of tricks that I had read about in the daily newspaper. As the digital revolution gathered pace, I discovered Conrad writing movingly in Lord Jim, and many other works about the consequences of technological disruption in the industry he knew best, shipping. As debates about immigration unsettled Europe and the United States, I marveled anew and afresh at how Conrad had produced any of these books in English, his third language, which he'd learnt only as an adult. We live in the flicker, may it last as long as the old earth keeps rolling, but darkness was here yesterday. We live as we dream, while the dream disappears, the life continues painfully. The mind of man is capable of anything because everything is in it, all the past as well as the future. We couldn't understand because we were too far, and could not remember because we were travelling in the night of first ages, those ages that had gone, leaving hardly a sign and no memories. It is a remarkable book. Simon Ongerman, who I follow on Twitter, we have two happiness peaks in life at 23 and 69. Funnily enough, we only appreciate our bodies in our 70s when we are grateful for all the still functioning parts. Mid-40s and 50s are stressful due to jobs, mortgages and kids. Political reflections, we all need to be as angry as Emma Gonzalez. Take a listen. Foreign Minister Lavrov warns the US not to play with fire, eyes ablaze as he lashed out against what he described as provocative support for autonomy-seeking Kurds in Syria. Lavrov warned the US not to play with fire. The FT has a great article about how Vladimir Putin mastered the cyber disinformation war, saying the Kremlin developed a new view of the nature of information. The recently installed President Vladimir Putin decided to treat it as a weapon. Since then, outsourcing cyber information campaigns has become a tactic used by Russia to create plausible deniability, which is something I wrote about, and lower the costs and risks of controversial overseas operations. Today, Kremlin-backed cyber campaigns have an unorthodox chain of command. It is one in which non-state actors, primarily businessmen with personal ties to important figures in the Kremlin, call the shots, not as in Western cyber operations. The electronic and signals intelligence gathering wings of the army and government agencies. And saying, part of the problem has been that by emphasizing the activities of the trolls, even though we cannot be sure of the true extent of their impact, Americans appear to have accepted that information is indeed a weapon. The idea is so close to Putin's heart, the whole world, it seems, is now speaking the Kremlin's language. 5th of December, I wrote that piece, we have a deviate tomahawk. Take a look at that. General McMaster, in response to the Mueller indictments, stated in Munich that the facts of Russian meddling in our election are beyond dispute. And as I said, in December 2016, the Russians ran a seriously sophisticated program of interference, mostly digital. I have no doubt, I said in December 2016, that Putin ran a seriously 21st century, predominantly digital program of interference which amplified the Trump candidacy. September 2012, quoting something from 1997, a US Army journal, I said one of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. Information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, but will be spawned like any Hollywood drama out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy and greed. Emotions rather than strategy will set the terms of information warfare struggles. A highly stressed president under siege without off-ramps who knows that more indictments are coming his way. This is Trump's reaction over the weekend. Facial recognition systems are now being used extensively across China. It's becoming a bit dystopian over there. Most people don't realize that the mobile phone is being weaponized. It is more powerful than any conventional computer and it is totally vulnerable to hacking. Modern smartphone combines significant computing power made up of a very fast microprocessor and graphics engine, plus memory with a host of sensors and radios, including GPS. The year climate change began to spin out of control, as an article in MIT Tech Review. For decades, scientists have warned that climate change would make extreme events like droughts, floods, hurricanes, and wildfires more frequent, more devastating, or both. In 2017, we got an up-close look at the raw ferocity of such an altered world as high-category hurricanes battered the east and the Gulf coasts, and wind-whipped fires scorched the west. In fact, despite all our climate policies, global accords, solar advances, wind farms, hybrid cars, Teslas, greenhouse gas emissions are still moving in the wrong direction. And as long as we're emitting any at all, we're only making the problem worse. Emissions are rising again after 3 relatively flat years. Greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels and industry picked up again in 2017, rising an estimated 2% according to the Global Carbon Project. Keeping temperatures from rising beyond a dangerous 2 degrees centigrade will require slashing emissions as much as 70% by mid-century, according to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. At more than 400 parts per million, we're already well beyond dangerous levels of carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere, as climbing temperatures, melting ice caps, and extreme weather events have made clear. In early November, the World Meteorological Organization declared that 2017 was likely to end up as one of the 3 warmest years on record, and the warmest one altogether that wasn't influenced by an El Nino event. That also makes the global average temperature during 2013 and 2017 the hottest 5-year average recorded. Paper concluded that worldwide temperatures could rise nearly 5 degrees centigrade by the end of the century, 15% higher than the previous central estimate under the business-as-usual emission scenario outlined by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It talks about the melting Arctic. Between October 2016 and September 2017, the area above the 60th parallel north experienced the second warmest air temperature anomaly since 1900. In March, satellites recorded the lowest sea ice winter maximum on record. Melting glaciers and sea ice are particularly worrisome trends because they trigger critical secondary effects, notably including increasing rates of sea level rise. Talking about massive wildfires. Tracing through this list, it becomes increasingly clear how the links between distant events lock into self-reinforcing loops: rising emissions, higher temperatures, shrinking sea ice, additional warming, extended droughts, bigger wildfires, and higher emissions still. That means it will become increasingly difficult to pull out of the spiral. Makes it increasingly urgent that we begin serious efforts to do so soon. 23rd of November 2015, I wrote a piece that I said, "I cannot help feeling we're like frogs in boiling water. We have created massive interference in the cosmic tuning phenomenon." I like these photographs from Yam Photo, California. This was during the time of the wildfires, and a brand new day in Montecito, sunrise. Let's move on to the currency markets and take a look. Euro dollar 123.90, dollar index 89.39, Japanese yen 106.78, the Swiss franc 0.9307, the pound 139.80. The Australian dollar has had a big bounce this morning, 0.7929. India rupee 64.515, South Korean won 1070.10, Brazilian real 323.48, Egyptian pound 17.6335, and the South African rand, about which I'm very bullish, 1169.54. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart, last trading around the 89.39 level. I tend to think it's trying to find its footing. Euro dollar, let's take a look at that. This is a chart from T Commodity. We're currently at 123.90, trading a little bit soft. Feels as if it's going to go low. Bitcoin, however, that's bounced big. Last trading at 11,500. Crossed the 11,000 threshold in its 4th day of gains. It's rallied sharply from that low not too long ago. Gold, let's take a look at that. Gold last trading at 1341.50, and WTI crude oil last trading at $62.23. India orders a 3-month probe into Tycoon Brothers' alleged siphoning of cash. Sources say, have a read, the Singh brothers took at least $78 million out of the publicly traded hospital company they control without board approval about a year ago. My piece over the weekend was entitled The Wind of Change. It was about Ramaphosa's State of the Union speech, which I liked and which I was bullish about, saying it was a buy signal to buy South African assets. He quoted Hugh Masekela, I want to be there when the people start to turn it around, which I thought was very powerful. I was saying Africa is not a country, though it's a ubiquitous meme, and at its core is an absolute truth. The continent is non-linear, I said. Kinshasa is not Addis Ababa, it's not Lagos, it's not Pretoria. But I was saying a wind of change was blowing through the continent. I was saying that, I quoted Condoleezza Rice, the birth pangs of a new Middle East, and we a new Africa. And I was simply saying that, Angola and Zimbabwe are against the old FLMs reinventing themselves. They've got to make sure that reinvention is real, otherwise they won't survive. South Africa, I was saying, was a relatively painless birth, notwithstanding Zuma's truculence. And then on the other side of the continuum, I was talking about Ethiopia and DR Congo, both of which I saw as risky. This is one of my favorite photographs of all time, Nelson Mandela dancing. South African all shares down 1.35% year to date and is a buy. I believe South African markets are in a process of pricing out a quite savage Zuma haircut discount and might even move to a Ramaphosa premium. And you see that in this from ETM Analytics, rapid eradication of the discount placed on the Zuma administration. Recent rand gains versus the dollar have brought the currency back to average post-GFC nominal EMFX levels. Rapid eradication of the discount placed on the Zuma administration. Dollar versus rand, take a look at the 6-month chart, I think you buy the rand. Congo for the Congolese Helen Epstein. Beneath Congo's soil lies an estimated $24 trillion in natural resources. Supplies of oil, gold, diamonds, coltan, cobalt, nickel, copper, uranium, iron. The wealth is the source of untold suffering. Today, young people across Congo, as well as clergy and society leaders, are united in their desire for President Kabila, who has postponed scheduled elections twice, to step down. The PSYOPs-inspired mayhem of Rwandan, Ugandan-backed proxy forces has clouded the conflict in eastern Congo, making it easy for casual observers to throw up their hands and blame the Congolese for their own misfortunes. The greatest danger now is that Kabila will be replaced by yet another Western prop in the interest of stability. Let's hope that is not part of Secretary of State Tillerson's agenda. IMF deadlock makes Zambia's bonds the worst in emerging markets, having lost 5.8% according to Bloomberg on Monday. The kwacha weakened 1% against the dollar, the most globally, to its lowest level in almost 6 weeks. Doubts over whether the government will secure a $1.3 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund have resurfaced among investors. Without a deal, Africa's second biggest copper producer could be in trouble, given that the IMF said in October it was at high risk of debt distress. So let's keep an eye on that. Doesn't look very good. Leaders must give exporters access to all the foreign currency they get from selling goods within 14 days of the funds being deposited. That's Angola as a step forward. Nigerian all shares up 9.79% so far this year. Ghana's stock exchange composite index is up a whopping 29.44% this year. At least 17 dead, a number of people still missing after 15-meter pile of garbage collapses on homes after heavy rain in Maputo. Unfortunately, garbage is a huge problem, particularly here. No one's picking it up. This is another photograph of Maputo, but taken from the sea at sunset. Kenya is one of the UK's oldest friends, and I want our partnership to flourish. Good to speak to the new Foreign Office Minister, Dr. Monica Juma, this morning, and look forward to welcoming Kenya to the Commonwealth 18 Summit this year. Demand for electricity is growing at about 8% a year until 2020, according to the government's transmission and generation plan. KenGen plans to add 1,745 megawatts of electricity from geothermal sources by 2025. Kenya shilling last at 101.347. Nairobi all share up 5.26% this year. Kakuzi had a strong day yesterday. That's up 18.54% year to date. They pivoted to avocados before the millennials snaffled up all the world's supply. Safaricom is up 11.48% year to date, and the NSE 20 is up 0.2% so far this year. Once again, thank you for stopping by.